Okay, back at it. We've got 3 cosine 3x, so now we're ready for our table. Well, we know that cosine, the basic graph, starts up here at 1, goes to 0, goes to -1, goes to 0, and then goes to 1. So it looks like this, right? Okay. So we know we haven't shifted left or right, so we're going to start off at 0. And that's our starting point. So our starting point is 0. And then we're going to have 0 plus 1 step, 0 plus 2 steps, 0 plus 3 steps, and 0 plus 4 steps. But how big is each step? So there's our starting point. And each time our step is going to be pi/2. Right? So we take 1 pi/2 steps, plus 2 pi/2 steps, plus 3 pi/2 steps, plus 4 pi/2 steps. So that means we're going to go from 0 to pi/2 to 2 pi/2, or pi, to 3 pi/2, and then to 4 pi/2, right? Which is the same as 2 pi. Then notice what we have over here. We have our old outputs for cosine living right here. So what were our old outputs for cosine? Well, it started off at 1 here, and then went to 0, then went to -1, then went to 0, and then it went to 1. And what do we do with all of those old outputs? Well, first, we multiply all those old outputs by 3. And then we take all those that have been multiplied by 3 and we add 3. Right? So algebraically, that's what's happening. So I get 6, 3, 0, 6, 3, 0, 3, and 6. So why is that great? Because there's all your points. And let's see why that makes sense. Well, that makes sense because we said earlier that our midline was up here at y is equal to 3. It's going to go up to 6 and down to 0 because you go from your midline and you open up the amplitude of 3 and down the amplitude of 3 to really find this envelope that your function is living in. So this range of values. Okay. And again, we start off in the x at 0. We take 1 step and get pi/2. We take 2 steps and get 2 pi/2. 3 steps and get 3 pi/2. And 4 steps and get 4 pi/2. Okay? So now that I have that, my original again is at 6. Then I take 1 step, I'm at 3. Take another step, I'm at 0. Another step at 3 pi/2. And last step here. So it goes like this, comes down, goes like this, and goes like this, yes? All right, so that's it. So that's 10. Now we have to do 15. Whoa, that was 15, sorry. Okay, so we just did 15, no big deal. So that's 15. Now we're going to go back and do 10. So when I do 10, it's f of x is equal to -1 plus the cosine of x. So this time I'm not going to do the whole chart. I'm going to do the whole chart every time. That's fine. Notice it's just the cosine of x minus 1. So this is telling us that a is 1, that b is 1, that h is 0, and that k is -1. So this k being -1 is telling you that the midline is now -1. So the whole graph, you just took all your old outputs and shifted down to -1. So you have a midline. You have this midline right here at y is equal to -1. And then you have this that goes like that, this that goes like that. And then from that midline of -1, you take the amplitude 1 and go in either direction 1, and that creates your range of values. That this version of cosine will never go beyond 0 and -2, right? So just to make sure that's clear, this is going 1 down this way and 1 up this way. Okay. So we see that cosine starts at a peak, so it's going to start at a peak, go to a midline, go to a valley, go to a peak, go to a midline. So it's going to look like this, right? We also know, since there's no shift left or right or no change of the period, it's going to be 0, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So if that made sense to you, yes, you can answer it like that. But to be careful and do the whole table, we'll do that now. So the amplitude is absolute value of A, which is absolute value of 1, which is 1. The period is 2 pi over B, which is 2 pi over 1, so it's 2 pi. Step size is period over 4, so it's 2 pi over 4. So you get pi over 2. Now that I know all that information, I can now make my table. So for my table, I'm going to have x's, and my function is cosine of x is -1. So I'm going to have my starting value. Cosine starts at 0, and then it takes 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, and 5 steps. All right. And how big is each step? Well, in this case, every step is size pi over 2. Oh, we don't take 5 steps. Let me erase that. My bad. Right? So here's your starting point. And then again, we take 1 step of size pi over 2, 2 steps of size pi over 2, 3 steps, and then 4 steps. So that means in the x direction, we're going to get 0, and then pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and 4 pi over 2. Right? So that means for my graph, I'm going to have 0, take 1 step to pi over 2, another step to 2 pi over 2, which we know is pi, 3 pi over 2, and the last one is 4 pi over 2, which we know is 2 pi. Okay. And now we're ready to graph the y's. Well, I know that my old cosine graph is peak, midline, valley, midline, peak for cosine, right? With peaks being at 1, midline being at 0, and valley being at -1. So for my original cosine, our outputs for those values were what? 0, pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, oh crap on a sec. 0, sorry I wasn't thinking. 0, not 1, 0, it's 1, 0, height of 1, height of 0, height of -1, a height of 0, and a height of 1. So those are our old cosine values, but we take all those values and subtract 1. So we get 0, -1, -2, -1, and it should be 0. So that's +1. It should be 0. So that's +1. Right? All right. So then if I graph that thing, yeah, no, I can stop. I'll do